Good morning. Amy and Michael, thank you for that peaceful special music. My nerves needed that. I am not a fan of being up front. That might be a shock to some, but I really don't like being up front. I might have even thrown a small temper tantrum when I was initially asked to do this. If you know my husband, he's a patient man, so he circled back around. And he asked me again, and I said, let me pray about it. He said, listen, Jonah. So if that's true, and there really is someone here that needs to hear this, I ask that God will be with me. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you know I am not excited and that my nerves are very raw. And Lord, it's only through your grace that I will have peace and be able to express those things that you need me to speak today. I ask that you will bring and put a big, huge, beautiful guardian angel hedge around this place, and that those hearts and minds that need to hear something today, that the distractions will be kept at bay, and that their hearts will be soil ready to receive the seeds. In your precious and holy name, amen. Whew, okay, well, that was my two mites. Thank you, Peter. I hope it got God's attention. Chris and I will be married 27 years in October. Amen. Praise the Lord. And for those of you that don't know, we tend to like to learn the hard way. So in those 27 years, we've been through many ups and downs. And it's been definitely an exciting ride with that man, and I love him dearly. So I would just like to share with you today some of those life lessons that we learned the hard way, and hopefully you don't have to. Quick public service announcement. These are for normal marriages that have normal issues that, you're going to have bumps in the road. That's normal. If your bumps are larger, please seek extra help. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, so marriage, the seasons of marriage. There's a season that starts before you get married, and I'd like to address that a little bit really quick. Psalms 143 verse 10 seems to be an appropriate verse for this season. It says, "Teach me to do your will, for you are my God, and let your good spirit lead me on level ground." I wish I would have lived by that verse before I got married. I'd like to start with young people, let God write your love story. Just so that doesn't sound cliche, that's not a passive engagement. You need to be creating social environments where a lot of young people can get together. You get to know a lot of diverse people. Be engaging and be willing to be engaged with. Even introverts can enjoy social gatherings for my introverted daughters. But this is also not a passive thing. You also have a work to do. I'd like to give you a few steps. Find a friend that you trust. And that you trust is very important. Then you're going to ask them to help you find your character flaws. We all have them. It's not a surprise to anyone in this room. But you're going to ask them to point out your character flaws, and with God's grace and help, you're going to work on those, you, God, and that trusted friend. Now, it might be as small as maybe you're a chatty Cathy, like myself, and I had to practice listening. I still sometimes struggle with that. Maybe you're a negative Nelly, and you need to work on being positive. Being a positive, spirited person, people like being around that. Maybe you're clingy. I can be clingy, so I need to, not be that way. It may be a small grooming tip. Let me tell you a little story about that. My husband, when I first met him, also, he told me he was going to sit back by the PA booth so he could mute me if he needed to, but now he's right up front. I don't know if I like that better. When I first met Mr. Anderson, maybe you've heard this story, he had this huge swoop that kind of went like this, and then he had a little peacock over on the side. And he was a lovely human. He's the human he is today, and I enjoyed his company. They put he and I in charge of organizing the whole stockroom in the cafeteria at GCA, and I knew I liked him. He was one of my good friends. But the Christmas banquet happened, and during that Christmas banquet, he slicked his hair back. He decided he liked that style, and that caught my eye. The rest is history. So, grooming can be an important task, just so you know. The last thing is maybe a little more serious. Get to know yourself. Get to know who God created you to be, and become comfortable with who God wants you to be. So when God brings that special person into your life, you don't disappear in the character traits of the other person. Super important. Probably more so for females, but I know men sometimes can struggle with that too. So very important. Ellen White's very clear that husbands and wives are two individual people in a marriage situation. Okay, early years. Woo! Those were rough for me and Mr. Anderson. I feel like Genesis 2:24 is a very appropriate scripture for this. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. If God can take a man and a woman and make them one, that's a miracle. If God can take a Chris and a Faith, two more opposite people in the world, and make us a united, happy marriage, that is a miracle. And he wants to work that in your lives as well. However, like I said, we learned a few hard lessons, and you're two individuals coming together, and you're trying to learn how to work together and be humble. Sometimes that can be hard when you haven't practiced that in the past. So I'd like to read a little excerpt out of Adventist Home, page 118. And it says, "Neither the husband nor the wife should attempt to exercise over the other an arbitrary control. Do not try to compel each other to yield to your wishes. You cannot do this and retain each other's love. Be kind, be patient, be forbearing, considerate, and courteous. By the grace of God, you can succeed in making each other happy, as in your marriage vows you promised to do." Sometimes when the rose-colored glasses fall off after the initial romance, it's easy to forget that this person you really loved so much that you married them. And so it's often good to remember that that is indeed the fact. Conflict will happen. It's okay. It's not what God wants, but it will happen. And I'd like to give you a few tips that Chris and I found that I thought were pretty miraculous. When you're in a conflict, we ladies, we tend to do this shut down and cry thing. Obviously, I'm speaking from my perspective. Not all women are the same. I'd like to put that little caveat out there. We kind of shut down, cry. If you want to watch something miraculous happen, gentlemen, I'm going to give you a tip. Come sit beside us, put your arms around us, and tell us you love us. We're okay with arguments as a general statement. We don't love it. But what we need to know more than anything else, especially in the beginning, is, are we, you and me, okay? And oftentimes, that's why we're crying. We've just had maybe a disagreement, And I need to know, are we okay? And that small act of coming beside me and wrapping your arm around me, maybe not even saying anything, or simply saying, I love you. We might start crying harder. Don't be afraid. That's actually a good thing. It means our hearts are softened and we feel relieved that we're okay. Another thing that I learned in the beginning is husbands are a thermostat. They tend to set the temperature of the relationship. I feel like God ordained it that way. Here's the little trick to that. The wife is the thermometer. So the husband might set the thermostat at 75 and he thinks it's warm and balmy in here. But the lady is over on the couch and she's freezing. We're speaking emotionally, obviously, because she does not feel loved for whatever reason. So husbands, you might have the thermostat set at 75, but it might not actually read 75 at the thermometer. Check in with your wives, especially in the early days. You're still figuring each other out. You might think it's golden. She might not. That does go both ways, but as a general statement, husbands, you're the thermostat. Wives, you're the thermometer. Another thing that we learned a little later on in our marriage, and I have to say, too, as I was preparing for this, I was reminded of some of the things that we used to do that we don't do as much anymore. And so this was one of those things. And I found that it really, for me personally, made a huge difference. It's a question that you ask each other. On a scale of 1 to 10, where is our marriage? And really let your spouse talk about that. Don't make excuses. Don't defend yourself. Let them just talk on where they feel the marriage is. The follow-up question is, what would it take for it to be a 10? And genuinely listen. You might be shocked or dismayed, either way, but it gives you something to work with. The nothing box, the mystical nothing box is real, ladies. I'm going to tell you a story that it would have saved me so many months of heartache if I knew that was a reality. In our early years of marriage, we lived in Chattanooga, and my parents lived in Knoxville. And so often on weekends, we would travel up to Knoxville for the weekend to spend with my folks. And I am a chatty Cathy, and my mom is a chatty Cathy. So as a teenager, when we drove in the car, we chatted. So now I'm married to Mr. A, and it's an hour-and-a-half drive all the way to Knoxville, and there was silence. So I am thinking, he's mad. What did I do? I would go through all the details of the week trying to figure out what I had done to make him mad. This literally went on for months. Finally, out of utter dismay, like my nerves were shot after an hour and a half of silence. So after one day we're traveling up there, and I'm like, are you mad at me, honey? Did I do something? And he looked shocked. He's like, no, why? Well, you're quiet. He's like, I don't have anything to say. You're not thinking about anything? He's like, nope. Like really? Like you're not thinking about what you're going to do when you get there, or like that you need to put air in the tire? Nothing? Nope. Now, I don't know about you ladies, but I was shocked. Shook to my core, actually. And so then I just had to make sure. So you're not mad at me? He's like, no, there's nothing happening up here. He didn't say that. I added that. So that is a real thing, and it's okay if they're silent. They're probably not mad at you. It's a small thing, life-changing for me personally. So I thought I'd share. One more thing. Often in a marriage, there's one spouse that it tends to be maybe more spiritual than the other. And just as a word of advice, give that other spouse's spiritual life a shot. Be silent. Allow God to work in their life, not you. For what that's worth. Okay, the young children years. This is an exciting time for Chris and I. Romans 12:10 through 13, I feel, is a very appropriate scripture for this. Be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love, in honor, giving preference to one another, not lacking in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoice in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer. If there ever was a more challenging time in most married lives, it's when you bring young children into the world. You potentially still are newlyweds yourself, maybe only 2 or 3 years under your belt. That's still a newlywed, trust me. And now you've added little people to the mix. It can be very exciting. And if there was ever a time in a married life that God really needs husbands to be a house band, it is now. So I'd like to read another excerpt from one of my favorite authors, from Adventist Home Again. The work of making home happy does not rest upon the mother alone. Fathers have an important part to act. The husband is the house band of the home treasures, binding by his strong, earnest, devoted affection the members of the household, mother and children, together in the strongest bonds of union. His name, house band, is the true definition of husband. I saw that but few fathers realized their true responsibility. So, I'd like to give another little caveat here. During these years of our married life, I was a stay-at-home mom. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about leans towards stay-at-home moms. I've done both. I've worked outside the home. I've worked in the home. I'm not advocating for one or the other. I just wanted to be clear on that. So at a time when the parents are being pulled in so many directions, it's very important for the husband and wife to be connected. There's so many exterior pressures and pulls, interior and exterior, in the home during this time. I'd like to speak to the ladies first. So, children are an addition to your relationship with your spouse. They don't all of a sudden usurp your relationship to your husband. And so they need to be added to, and the husband should not be neglected in this time. The children need that visual example that mom and dad love each other, and they need that daily, actually. During this time, it was an exceptionally hard time for me. My husband, I was at home, he was working outside of the home, and he would have to put in long hours. He worked construction at that time. And we discovered this particular thing that we did, and for me personally, it made all the difference. It was a date every night. It costs no money. It just costs your time. And how we often would implement it is supper. After supper, the children would clean up, and while the children were cleaning up, we would go sit on the porch. For you men who this sounds super scary, start out in 10 minutes, 10-minute increments, and slowly increase it till it's about 30 minutes. Ladies, give the men grace. They might be learning this attribute for the first time in their lives. But the children also need to be able to see that mom and dad's relationship is more important than anything else. So before you flip on the television or open the newspaper or grab your smartphones and start scrolling, make sure that you, husband and wife, spend time together. For me, this was something that I looked forward to all day long. I couldn't wait till Chris got home so we could have our date on the front porch. So the other thing that I like to talk about, ladies, maybe you've heard, men are visual creatures. So if you've been in your jammies all day, no hate, I love being in my jammies all day, trust me. But if you know he's about to get home, take a minute. Brush your hair, if you haven't. Maybe put on a nice outfit. Let me be clear. I'm not saying you need to be supermodel status. That's not what I'm saying. But they do appreciate the effort. They do notice it. Men, comment. Hey, you look nice tonight, sweetie. We also like to be communicated with and said we look nice. Men on that topic, this time in a woman's life after she's given birth is a very a tumultuous time emotionally for us. Our bodies have changed drastically, maybe never to look the same again. Actually, they never will. It's fine. It's fine. And so we often struggle with our self-esteem. We all know that God gives us our self-worth, and that is good and true, but we live on planet Earth, and our emotions are often tied in with how we look because our world has communicated that to us. And I'd like to just share with you, as we women look in our image of our mirror, you men hold a hammer in your hand. And that hammer is your words, your actions, and your deeds. And with that hammer, you can either build a beautiful frame for our mirror, or you can shatter the glass and shatter our glass for us, our image for us. And I would just like to encourage you that work on building that beautiful frame. I promise you that if you help us build that beautiful frame around our mirror, you will reap rewards. Ladies, if men are putting forth that effort, please don't say, I want him to do it because he wants to, not because he was told to. Guys need an attaboy every once in a while. You know what I'm saying, guys? So give them an attaboy. Thanks, guys. We women often can be critical of the effort that our husbands put in, and a dog that's not encouraged will stop doing the good tasks that we, sorry, I'm referring to you guys, dogs, but they will stop doing those things that we want them to do. Sorry. Especially during this time, women are often exhausted at the end of the day. Ladies, can I get a witness? If you work outside the home, you still have to come home, do dishes, cook, laundry, all of that. If you've stayed at home, you have had no adult interaction at all. Children are beautiful. Children, you guys know that you're my favorite people. But as adults, you're like, oh, I'd love to have some adult interaction. And you've been doing dishes literally all day long and the sink is still full. You've probably been sweeping the floor all day long and it still looks like the dog tracked mud in. And so your job often feels unappreciated. And so you're exhausted. And so husbands, if you want to help with that exhaustion at the end of the day, maybe when you get home, do some dishes or unload the dishwasher. Fold a basket of clothes. Maybe take the kids outside and play a game of freeze tag so mom can have a moment. She won't be as tired at the end of the day. Ladies, on that being tired at the end of the day, find ways to rejuvenate yourself so that you aren't exhausted at the end of the day. I know what I'm asking is short of a miracle, but there are things, and we women know there are things that we can do so that we're not exhausted when the end of the day comes. I'd like to read a little, one more excerpt from one of my favorite books currently, after preparing for the sermon. And it talks a little bit about sometimes we wives, we really don't value what we do in the home. Whether you work in the home or not, this really actually does apply to you, because we are designing and forming spirits for God's kingdom, souls for God's kingdom. The mother seldom appreciates her own work and frequently sets a low esteem upon her labor, that she regards it as domestic drudgery. She goes through the same round day after day, week after week, with no special marked results. She cannot tell at the close of the day the many little things that she has accomplished. Placed beside her husband's achievements, she feels that she has done nothing worth mentioning. The father frequently comes in with a self-satisfied air and proudly recounts what he has accomplished through the day. His remarks show that now he must be waited upon by the mother. No one in this room is like this. So, she has not acted the merchant or bought nor sold. She has not acted the farmer in tilling the soil. She has not acted the mechanic. Therefore, she has done nothing to make her weary. He criticizes and censors and dictates as though he was the Lord of creation, and this is all the more trying to the wife and mother, because she has become very weary at her post of duty during the day, and yet she cannot see what she has done and is really disheartened. Could the veil be withdrawn and father and mother see as God sees the work of the day, and see how his infinite eye compares the work of the one with that of the other, they would be astonished at the heavenly revelation. The father would view his labors in a more modest light, while the mother would have new courage and energy to pursue her labor with wisdom, perseverance, and patience. Now she knows its value, while the father has been dealing with things which must perish and pass away. The mother has been dealing with developing minds and characters, working not only for time, but for eternity. When I read that, I felt a little disheartened by my own effort when my children were young. But I love you, ladies, if you're back there. The Middle Ages and life with teenagers. The old adage, who can know a woman's mind? She doesn't even understand it herself. I love it. I'm going to read 1 Peter 3:5-9. For after this manner, in the old time, the holy women also, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife, as unto the weaker vessel, as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Finally, be ye all of one mind, having compassion one of another. So, the Apostle Paul wrote that. And living with your wife with understanding, first of all, involves mutual submission. Now, stay with me. Don't tune me out yet. Prior to commanding wives to submit to their husbands, the Apostle Paul also taught that we are to submit to one another in the fear of the Lord in Ephesians 5:21. Submission, thus, is the responsibility of Christian husbands as well as Christian wives. Though not submitting to his wife as a leader, a believing husband must submit to the loving duty of being sensitive to her needs, her feelings, and her fears. The phrase giving honor is another way of saying treat your wife with respect. I have found over the years that this whole love-respect debate has slightly shifted for me. I'm getting older, and I have found that respect is becoming way more important to me, maybe even overshadowing the need for love. I still want to be loved, don't get me wrong. I'm still a woman, I'm still a female, but I want to be respected as well. And the men in this room know what that feels like. They want to be respected as well. This time of life seems to be an emotional struggle for both genders. The whole midlife crisis thing is happening right about now. You're raising teenagers that in our world and society today can be a major challenge and can put a strain on a marriage. And so more than ever, it is a time to connect and find ways to connect in a very meaningful way. Chris and I have found that the 5 love languages really are a thing. They really actually work. And so check in with your spouse. Don't be shocked if their love languages have changed over the years. It happens. If you're so lucky that your spouse has more than one kind, you have options of how to show them love, so you're blessed. Ladies, this can be a time when we can find it easy to be negative. We often are going through our time of change. Our hormones are playing tricks on our minds. That foggy brain thing is horrible and very frustrating. But find ways to stay positive. This is a time when your family really needs, I'm preaching to myself, your family needs you to be the light in a world of darkness. Prayer really changes things. I personally have found that. There have been times when I just felt like the world was against me, and I took a moment to pray to God, and miraculously, the very things that were driving me crazy or making me feel worthless stopped, disappeared, whether God made me not notice it or if it really, he took it away, it was really there. Ladies, find a friend that you can be mentored by, someone maybe who's gone through this before and can help you navigate the minefields of hormones. It's not fun. Ladies, fill your husband's love cup to overflowing. Right now, he needs that. He also has a lot of pressures on him as well. And he's also battling with unsure thoughts that are bombarding him and his masculinity, especially in the world that we live in today. He needs to be reassured that he is the one for you. So find ways that are meaningful to him and reassure him daily. We like to be reassured daily, so do they. There's 2 more seasons of the marriage life I have not experienced yet, although we're on the verge of empty nesting. I seem to be excited about it. Mr. Anderson weeps in the corner every morning. I'm like, woohoo! They flown the coop. Alina and Johanna, if you're listening, I do love you, but, you know. They are, for those that don't know, they are canvassing in Oklahoma this summer, so it is just Chris and I in the house this summer. I'm loving it. It's great. There's very few dishes, and I rarely have to cook. But it would, and then the last season would be the golden years. Obviously, I've not experienced either one of those yet, but I look at around me and I see lots of examples, and it would appear to me that your spouse needs to be your best friend. I mean, obviously that would be true all the way through, but when I look specifically at my mom and dad, my mom is my dad's life. Whenever she goes out of town, every Sabbath morning, we get a call from my dad. Why? Because he doesn't know what to do with himself, and he's lonely because his best friend isn't there, and I actually think that's precious. Every night they play games together. Just this last week, my mother had some issues, and she was having a difficulty walking, and my father was out of town. He stopped what he was doing, and he came home because his wife, his best friend, needed him. And I just feel like that is something beautiful, and I am looking forward to the empty nest and the golden years with the love of my life. I'd like to end with this, that if you've heard something today that you want to apply to your life, you can't do these things or make these changes so that he will act the way I want him to, or that she will be the wife that I need. You need to do them because God needs you to be that person. He needs us as humanity, as Christians, to be a light to the world. And I have modified this quote a little bit. A great marriage can tell more in behalf of Christianity than all the sermons that can be preached. And I truly believe that others will look in and see a healthy, happy marriage, and they will want to know why. Let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for designing us for a desire to be with others, for building our hearts to want to be loved and respected, and Lord, for creating Adam and Eve as an example of what you have designed for us in a marriage. Lord, we want to be more like you each and every day in our interactions with our spouse and in our families. And Lord, we only know that we can do that through your grace and your power. And we ask that you would help us to be more like you each and every day, is our prayer in your precious name. Amen.